Today is June 17th, 2008. I am Cassie Potasic, and it is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Beulah, North Dakota. Can you please tell me your full name?
Edwin Herbert Kittler.
When and where were you born?
I was born on May 5th, 1948, Hazen, North Dakota.
All right. Have you ever heard an interesting story about your birth?
No, none. Probably the only thing in my life that's been normal.
Were you at home or in a hospital?
Hospital, Hazen Hospital.
Can you please share some of your earliest memories with us?
We lived south in South Beulah. One of the earliest memories I have was a massive flood we had down there where our house received some damage, the basement caved in. I remember all of us, most of the neighbors down there still having the outhouses, not having any indoor plumbing. There were many kids in our neighborhood. We had fun playing. None of the homes were like new structures. That's the way it was. We all had large gardens. Walked to school every day, which was a trek for us, but that was what way it was. But those are some of my earlier memories.
Right. Well, you were talking about the homes in Beulah when you were growing up. Can you tell us about the house you grew up in?
Okay, it was just a small home. There were only 3 rooms. Combination kitchen, dining room, and two bedrooms. It was very, very small. We had cold running water only. We had a full basement, which was not finished, but that was our storage downstairs. So that's what we had when I was growing up.
Right. How did you keep the house warm?
Coal heat. It's one thing I don't miss to this day, carry out the hot ashes.
All right. You said that you had one brother?
One brother.
Did you share a bedroom then?
Yes. Yes.
Can you tell me about your brother?
He's 5 years younger than I am. He lives in Hazen, has 2 sons. Because we were 5 years apart, I guess we had different playmates at the time. You know, it wasn't until we got older that we started doing things together.
What was his name?
Wilmer Kittler.
Did you get along well while you were growing up?
Other than the usual sibling spats, yeah.
Was there any competition between you?
No, with the age difference. In fact, he says now he should have been a little bit closer to me in age because of all the different family members and things like that he never got to know that I got to know.
Right. What kinds of mischief did you get into with your brother?
With my brother?
Or by yourself?
Or by myself. Don't you see my halo? Really, we didn't get... Probably the only thing is we had one batch of neighbors down there. There was an empty lot between us, and Shirley and Sharon and I would scrap every summer and argue over whose dandelions they were and how we paid to get rid of them. You know, we really didn't get into any mischief down there. Couldn't, because if you got in trouble, you got home, you were in worse shape. Parents weren't very lenient with that, so you really had to be careful.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your brother when you were growing up?
I was pretty young when I got my camera, and I guess he was my guinea pig. He didn't like to have his pictures taken so often, but I really didn't give much choice.
When did you get your camera?
Oh, I was maybe about 8, 9 years old. And that's something I still love to do today, is photography.
Did you have to buy the camera for yourself? Or
No, I got it as a gift.
For birthday, Christmas?
Birthday, probably. I think it was. I don't think it was Christmas.
Right. What other kind? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was.
What other kinds of things did you do for pastimes or for fun?
Pastimes. All of us kids now, we would play Cowboys and Indians, Anti-I Over. Toys were not. No one had a whole lot of toys. So we kind of created our own games. But that was primarily what we did, and we'd all get together. There was very little traffic. We could play and romp all over the place.
Did you have different games in the winter?
Winters, sledding. But, you know, and I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but it seems like we had really cold, miserable, and lots of snowy winters then, which we haven't had, you know. And so I remember staying indoors a lot, too. Reading. I guess that was a pastime.
What would you read?
Novels. Back then, I suppose, like the Hardy Boys books and those kind of books. You know, Nancy Drew books. And something I got started when I was younger, a little old neighbor lady of ours had just a huge box full of old local newspapers. And she's going to throw them out, and she gave them to me because she knew I liked to read, and I just cut out certain articles about certain things that I like. And that's something I've maintained all my life. She got me going on that. So I have scrapbooks from way back.
All right. Did you have any pets growing up?
No. No, we were not allowed to have pets.
Did you have inside games that you played?
Pinochle. Something Dad taught us early in life. Play Pinochle. That was really our only games. You know, we didn't have a television until I was like a junior in high school, so that was about 64, 65, so we did a lot of card playing in the winter. And that was amongst all of us neighbors. We'd get together at everybody's house and just play cards.
Did you listen to radio programs?
Mm-hmm. All the time.
What programs?
One was called the Louisiana Hayride, country music. And then at that time you had several stations that still would play what's called old-time music, polka waltz music. We'd listen to a lot of that.
Right.
So that was entertainment.
Do you remember anything else about the things you did for fun when you were growing up?
Not a whole lot as far as school activities. I wasn't never allowed to go to any of those things until I was about a sophomore in high school, you know. So if it was something that was involved there, I pretty much had to stay home. So did my buddy, lived a couple houses away, and we'd sit and grumble, but I guess it didn't hurt us. We're still here today, you know. No, I mean, we just had fun. Our daughter, just when she was much younger and was over here playing, and we're bored. And I said, you know what, guys? When I grew up, we didn't have all these handy-dandy fancy toys. Why don't you play Anti-I Over? That's boring. What is it? We taught them how to do it. They thought it was great. So, you know, we could play it forever. That was totally okay for us.
Did you ever do any fishing or hunting?
No, my dad wasn't a hunter or fisherman.
Okay.
We went out to my uncle's farms. Most of my uncles were farmers. I remember going out there. I remember spending at least a week or two each summer with one of my uncles, and I loved it out there. And they all lived within a 10-mile radius, from us here. So I mean, we'd be out there a lot.
Can you tell me what it was like during the weeks that you spent out there?
Oh, it'd be fun. I mean, you'd be feeding the chickens, and then the one uncle had a lot of sheep, and so help feed them and feed the bottle lambs and watch the milking and then the separating of the cream, and it was just nice. It was quiet.
All right. Well, you've mentioned school a couple times. Can you tell me about where you went to school?
Went to school at Beulah Public School Systems and graduated in May of 1966.
For grade school, how many kids did you have in your class?
Oh, we had 48 seniors, I know that, but as far as grade school, there were a time where we had 2 or 3 sections. We had quite a few kids when we were younger, but when I went to school, when you reached the age of 16, you could legally quit school without getting into trouble, and that happened to us because we had like 100 and some kids in our sophomore year, and we ended up with 48 that graduated. Some people moved away, but a lot of them just quit school.
Right.
But that's where I went to school here locally. I went to BJC for just 1 year, and then I started working right away. And after that,
Okay. When you went to school, you mentioned you had to walk. How the walk was it?
Oh, back at the old school, I'd say it was probably about a good 6 to 8 blocks. And then when we moved to the new high school, it was like about probably 12 blocks then that we had to walk.
Did you ever get rides for any reason?
Not very often.
Okay. Did you have to bring your own lunch to school?
No, we always had a hot lunch program up there. One thing I remember about that is that we also were able to get on this milk program where you could stop and get it, and that was the best tasting milk. It was so cold. It was just really great to have that.
All right. What were some of the classes you took?
You talking like high school level type thing, or?
Let's start with grade school.
Okay. Well, I imagine I don't remember a whole lot about that, but like reading, English, arithmetic, then it's called math now, and some of the sciences.
Did you have a favorite class?
I guess I liked English and literature the best because
Did your school have a good library?
yes, it was small. When I was in grade school, it was a real small library, but we had the bookmobile stop, and so we could get all the reading things that we need. Once we got up to the high school level, we had a larger library, and then when we got to the new high school, we had a big library.
Right. Did you have a least favorite subject?
Chemistry. I'll never forget that. I was just happy to pass the class.
Were you generally a good student?
Yeah, because a lot of our teachers could discipline children, like physically hit them. And one year I was in the 7th grade, we had an instructor that was very temperamental, and he wouldn't even hesitate to swat somebody in the head. And that put the fear of God in the rest of us, with all teachers.
Can you tell me about some of your other teachers?
We had some very good instructors. We had one of my instructors used to have horrible handwriting, and she insisted that we have a penmanship class, and you will not get a good grade unless you master. And I guess making all those E's paid off. But we really had a lot of good teachers. They were really very nice. In fact, we had the all-school reunion here in 2005. I'm on the reunion committee, and one of my junior high instructors came home for the first time, and she still recognized me, and I recognized her, so. And people like that, they leave a mark in your life, and we had a lot of those teachers.
All right. Were there children of different ethnic backgrounds going to school with you?
No. Maybe later years in high school, we may have had a few Native Americans, but very few. But other than that, no, we didn't.
Did you ever try to speak German in school?
I knew nothing but German until at the age of 5, and my mother taught me how to speak English. So did we ever speak no. Because I don't remember what it was like in my first grade, trying to learn the English over the German, or if I struggled, I have no clue. But no, we never spoke German in school.
Okay. What's your favorite memory from going to school?
Favorite memory? The friendships that you create that last for years and years. I would have to say that's probably my most favorite memory.
Right.
Getting involved in extracurricular things, as the prom committee, things along that order.
Did your school ever do Christmas programs?
Oh yes, we had programs for Christmas. Not the high school level, but yes, we always had a Christmas program.
Do you remember anything about them?
Other than we had a gym full of people, I remember that, I remember one Christmas, we never had a Christmas tree when I grew up, because we just never did. And I remember winning the tree one year and coming home with it, and I thought that was the best gift of my life. It was the first time we'd ever had a Christmas tree, and I was probably about a 4th grader, maybe then, 5th grader.
Right. Did your school have any other parties or celebrations?
In high school, we had was called snow days in January, and then we had homecoming dance, the homecoming week with the dance type thing, and prom.
Can you tell me about some of these?
Oh, the homecoming week was always neat because we had a snake dance, and there was a big bonfire, and then of course the game, and then the homecoming dance afterwards, and everyone was just, when you got to the game, was blood. You had to win. It was homecoming. I never played sports, but that was probably the best time. The bunch of guys I ran around with, even as a junior in high school, you didn't think girls were too neat, so we never went to the prom. I usually go through that phase earlier in life. We were just late bloomers.
Was the high school and the grade school in the same building?
At one time, yes. Yes. And then 64 is when we moved to the new high school.
Okay. Was it a difficult transition from grade school to high school?
No. It might have been if we wouldn't, for myself, if we hadn't been in the same building, but everything was still the same. By the time I was a junior in high school, I pretty much could adjust to anything then.
there anything else you want to share with us about going to school?
Not at this time that I can think of.
Was getting an education important to your family?
Oh, yes, because my dad didn't have much of an education, so yes, that was important. My mother had her education through the 8th grade, and because of farm work could not further her education. She was required to stay home and farm, but yes, that was important to get an education.
All right. Oh, you started telling us a little bit about Christmas. Can you tell me about holidays when you were growing up? Which was your favorite?
Which was the favorite holiday? Christmas, because of all the goodies, I guess. That was the favorite holiday. We generally got together with my mom's side of the family for Christmas. Christmas Eve was spent at home for just the 4 of us, but Christmas Day it was a big family gathering. And as we all got older and more of my cousins had gotten married, of course the numbers that went to Grandpa and Grandma's got less, but that was always the one memory I have of Christmas, and I've looked for years and years and years for this. My grandmother had a silver metallic Christmas tree, and she always had large blue lights on it, and I always wanted that tree, and of course what happened to it I have no clue, but I finally found one a couple of years ago. It looks pretty similar to the one that she had, and I put that up every year as a memory tree to remind me of Christmas back then. I have blue lights, I have all that, just the way she did it.
Right.
So, I guess of all these memories, I just remember that the most, that tree. That left a mark in my life to where I had to look for one.
Okay. Did you believe in Santa Claus?
Oh, I'm sure I did, yeah. I don't recall, but I'm sure I did because my brother did, because I had to pretend.
All right. Did you receive a lot of gifts?
No, there was no money. I remember a couple Christmases where there weren't any gifts, and that's traumatic at that age. But you get older, you understand. No, there weren't a lot of gifts.
Right. Is there anything else you remember about celebrating Christmas?
No, other than that, I remember New Year's Eve. This is something that what we would generally do is just play cards on that. And the tradition here was at midnight, we had the Knife River Coal Mining Company in town here, and the Montana Dakota Utilities town. At the stroke of midnight, everybody'd flock outside because the mine whistles and all the church bells in town, and as many individuals who wanted to with their guns would shoot into the air, and that just happened all the time. It was just neat to be out there, hearing all the different bells from church. Every church had a bell, and listen to all the whistles and people shooting off their guns, and God forbid if they tried that now. But that was nice. That's the part that I remember.
Okay.
And that's, I guess, about all my memories for the holiday, or for Christmas and New Year's, But we celebrated them all, Thanksgiving and Easter and, like that. But they were never as hectic as the Christmas, They were more on a very low key.
Did you get together with family for all of these holidays?
Yes, yes.
Did you celebrate some of the other ones like Valentine's Day or Halloween?
No. No. One thing I remember from growing up at home is no one needed to have an invitation to come to your house. People would just show. If it was 10 minutes before dinner time, probably why they can, because you had a quick meal, you together. But Sundays were always spent going somewhere for Sunday dinner, and after so many times, and it always worked out, my mother would on Saturday night start cooking in huge quantity, and because we were about due to get hit with a bunch of company, and it did happen. And you always started out your Sunday dinner with chicken noodle soup before you got to your main entree. And then when you were done with that, you could go visiting until it was your time. You know, so this, and it always worked out, you know, I mean, that you knew someone would be coming. Because when this was happening, none of us had phones, you know, so there's no way of calling somebody saying we're coming.
Do you remember when you got a phone?
Oh, I was in high school, so I would say the early 60s. Like a 10-party phone that you couldn't get on if you had to. I remember those frustrating days. But yeah, but so that was a wonderful time when we get together. All of us kids would be playing, and you know.
Okay. Well, you started talking about Sundays, so why don't you tell me about where you went to church when you were growing up?
Okay. All my life I've been a member of Zion Lutheran, Beulah. We used to have services in German and English, and I think I mentioned that we used to go to German services only until I started confirmation, and then I was probably about 13, 14 years old. We started going to English services, but that was been our church. We used to have a small brick building, and in '64 we built the new big church. You probably saw it across from ours, not the one here, but as you go into town, you'll see the huge brick church. And been a member there all my life.
Did your family go to church every Sunday?
No. But we went quite regularly.
How important was religion to your family?
It was important because my grandparents on my mom's side instilled that it's very important to have that a part of your life.
All right. What were some of the religious activities that you took part in?
Well, like my confirmation, we would have something called this mission festival once a year where we'd have a guest speaker and, you know, and things along that order. I've taught Sunday school already on our church finance committee now, like for 42, 43 years. So church is important to me.
All right. Can you tell us about your confirmation?
The only thing I remember was a very hot day. The white gowns about drove us nuts. But that's been... one thing I do remember is then we were required to go to Bible school 3 weeks, full days prior to confirmation. In a building that had absolutely no air conditioning or air movement. But that, and I remember the day being very, very hot.
What things did you learn in your classes?
In the confirmation, Luther's Catechism, and then we had a Bible history book, of course, memorizing psalms, songs, hymns. Pastor was fantastic. I mean, I loved him dearly. He was a really good person. He got us all motivated.
All right. Do you remember very much about the ceremony?
No. Other than the church was packed beyond capacity because we were in a small church and there wasn't room for anybody anywhere. That's all I remember.
Did your family celebrate your confirmation?
Yes, there was a family dinner afterwards.
All right. When you were growing up, were you able to question religious teachings?
No, because when I grew up, we were taught that the pastor does no wrong. and you honored your pastor and you respected him. You know, and my parents weren't this way, but a lot of them were. Depending what religion you weren't allowed to play with other children of different faiths. Or date. I don't think that happens anymore, and that's a good thing. So, but yeah, that was really stressed.
Were there other things that were restricted because of religion when you were growing up?
No, because we could go to anyone else's, you know, anything. No, if we wanted to dance, we could go later in life. I could go dance, you know, things along that order and that. But no, there was nothing restricted.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to share with us about church and religion when you were growing up?
Well, this is something that did happen. It's kind of the goofy side, but we built our new church that we have, and we were having one particular summer having a problem with birds flying inside the sanctuary. And our pastor, I get up there earlier to fold these church bulletins, and our pastor says, we're having problems with the birds again, because we'd be sitting, he tells, listen to me, don't watch the birds. And it would just be when the organ would start playing, they fly. So he says, you go and play the organ. I haven't a clue how to play the organ. And you don't have to know how, just hit any key possible and as loud as you can. And this was like early in the morning. And so went there and I started hitting keys all over it. And we have a pile of rocks leading up to the cross, and he was up on the rocks, banging on the cross, talking, yelling. All of a sudden he motions for me to stop, and we looked and there were people there for church services. Yeah. We were really embarrassed. We tried to explain to them what we were doing, and they just kind of looked at us like, oh yeah? that one sticks out. Yep.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share about church?
No, we were both here at our house. We were baptized, confirmed, married. Our daughter was baptized, confirmed, married in the same church. So.
All right.
I think that's neat when that happens like that.
You grew up in Beulah.
Mm-hmm.
What was the population of the town when you were growing up? Just approximate.
Let's say maybe 400, 400 or 500 would be my guess. I don't really have a clue, and it wasn't very large.
Right. Do you know anything about the history of the town, how it was founded, or?
Yeah, but I don't have it with me now.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't remember what year it was anymore, but we're in 64, I think it was, we had our 50th. So 1912, 13, 14, somewhere is when Beulah was founded.
Okay.
I remember that. It was named after a guy that was living here named Beulah after his niece. And this lady has been here several times. When she was still alive, did come here.
Okay. Can you describe what Beulah was like when you were growing up?
Quiet, not much activity for kids to do, but then kids stayed home all the time. We used to have a place called the Sheep Shed. It was a dance area there where you could go roller skating on Sunday nights. Later in high school, we'd have dances in Zap, North Dakota. I don't know if you guys were in Zap or not, but they have a hall there where would have Saturday night dances up there. If you wanted to go anywhere, do anything, most of us, there were no vehicles, so you walked. you know, and you either stayed at home or you got involved in church activities like youth groups or things along that order. We did have a movie theater in town, and that was quite popular.
What movies would you go to?
Back then it was probably like the Three Stooges and Ma and Pa Kettle and, you know, things along that order. I don't remember what other ones. It would probably been like, those two have probably been the main ones that I remember going to those anyway, you know.
What were some of the businesses that were in town?
Oh, yeah, well, at one point I think we had 5 or 6 bars on Main Street, and we had a hardware store, Do It Best. We had, you know, 3 grocery stores at one point. 4 grocery stores that I remember. Always had a drugstore. Had 2 car dealerships. About 3, 4 service stations. I'm just trying to walk along here. Dry cleaners. Bowling alley. Remember that always.
Did you spend a lot of time there?
Yeah, I would. That'd be a place to hang out for us kids. We'd go there to hang out at their soda place. At the Beulah drugstore, that was our hang up when I went to school, or it was our hangout, because they had a soda fountain in the drugstore, and you got the best muds and sodas and everything in there. So, but we one time had a lot of businesses in town.
Right.
But oh, go ahead.
How many churches were in Beulah when you were growing up?
Okay, Concordia Lutheran, Zion Lutheran, Methodist, Congregational Church of God, Baptist, Catholic. 8 that I can remember. Yeah, that was. So we had only one Baptist church then.
Were there tensions between the different denominations?
I would say of all the different churches, the biggest dissension was between Lutheran Catholic.
Right.
And that's the only one that I would, because that used to be a really bad sore point with many families, especially for intermarriages. One of my family members went through that, you know.
Right. Can you tell me about your neighbors when you were living in town?
We had a lot of kids, a lot of kids to play with. We got along well down there, you know. In fact, just recently, one of my friends that lived down there found an old photo that was taken. I was probably about 10 years old. And it was fun sitting there trying to figure out who everybody is. But yeah, we got along great down there. We really did. We had an awful lot of fun.
Right. What social classes existed when you were growing up? Like the haves and the have-nots, or were there different? Was there a middle class and an upper class?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. You were either, as we would call it then, upper crust or lower crust. Those are basically the only two. You know, if the moms and dads had good jobs and they had a big fancy home and that, there was a lot of snubbing done to the other kids, especially when the rural kids started coming into town school. You know, I remember that being present an awful lot. You know, where they were, you're not our category, or up to our level, you know. And that doesn't exist anymore, because when our daughter went to school here, yet she kept saying all the time, "That's horrible, how could you go to school like that?" You know, well, that's the way it was. You know, parents drilled it into the children, and that's the way it was.
So were the children who came from rural families considered kind of the lowest on the ladder?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Was Saturday night kind of a big deal in town? Did everybody?
Yeah, it was, because All stores were open Saturday nights until 9 o'clock. And that was when farmers would come into town and do their shopping. And even us that lived in town would do our shopping Saturday nights. We'd go up there and park the car somewhere and just walk or mill all night long, visiting. You got to see anybody you wanted to then. That was a really special thing.
Okay. What were some of the positive aspects of growing up in a small town?
My opinion only, of course, better relationship with your fellow citizens. You get to know a lot of people really well. I felt growing up in Beulah, I received a really good education in school because we had good teachers, good faculty, good management there. You didn't, how do I want to say this? You didn't need a vehicle to drive 12, 14 miles to get to go do something. Everything was within walking distance.
Did your family own a vehicle?
Yes. Yeah.
Were there any negative aspects of growing up in town?
Oh, I suppose the gossip level. That is almost anywhere.
Right.
Other than that, it's all
Is there anything else you'd like to share about what it was like growing up in town?
I guess, no, I can't think of anything else.
Okay. Well then, can you tell me about some of the chores that you had to do while you were growing up?
Oh, chores was cutting grass. When I got older, the last couple of years in high school, we had a little grandma living in our neighborhood. I was pretty much chauffeuring her around for doctor's appointments and stuff. And gardening, we butchered our own chickens. That was, that was an activity that we did for chores, I guess. Shoveling snow, the simple things, I guess.
You kept chickens in town?
No, we would buy them and bring them into town. We could butcher them in town yet then.
Can you describe a butchering day?
Butchering day, you woke up early in the morning. You went out the night before to the farmer and you got your chickens live, put them in gunny sacks and left them there till the next morning. Then you chopped their heads off and let them run all over till they were down. And then this was the ugly part of butchering, was the scalding of chickens in super hot water. There's nothing worse than smelling hot feathers. And then you'd pluck your chickens and clean them up, and that was generally an all-day affair.
How were they preserved?
Frozen or canned. We froze most of our chickens, but then we canned a lot of them too then, so that if you wanted a quick meal, they were already cooked, just a matter of heating them up. So, but that was an all-day affair doing those.
Would you get together with neighbors or family to do that?
Chickens, we would get together, just us. When it come time to do pigs, that was always a family butchering.
Did you go out to farms to do pigs?
No, we'd do them in town too then. Usually go over to my grandparents in Hazen, and they had all the butchering equipment and everything, and we'd do all that there.
Would your family make sausage then?
Sausage, liver sausage, head cheese, and of course your hams and your chops and roasts and all that stuff. And I always had an older smokehouse that you put everything out there to smoke, and never worried about anybody stealing it because everybody did it, you know, left it out there. And they even made blood sausage once. Until I found out that it was real blood, I wouldn't eat it.
Do you remember how they made it?
No, they took the blood from the critter, you know, and they kept, I remember them boiling it forever and ever till it got clotty. And it was just, yeah, I know it's gross. I won't talk about it anymore. Yeah, no, I wouldn't eat that.
Right. What were, you mentioned shoveling snow, cutting grass. Did you ever have to help inside the house?
Wash dishes, I suppose. We probably carry out garbage.
How about laundry?
No, Mom always did that.
Right. When you got a little older, did you get a job in town somewhere?
Yes, I worked at the Beulah Community Nursing Home as a janitor's aide. And then after I graduated from high school, I got a job at an establishment called the Sleepy Hollow Inn. It was a restaurant, bar, steakhouse type place, washing dishes.
All right. Was the money yours to keep, or did you take
No.
it home to the family?
No, that was mine to keep. I was planning to go to college, so I was able to. But at $1.10 an hour, you didn't get rich.
What else do you remember about chores or working when you were growing up?
Everybody had chores there. There wasn't, I mean, none of us had free time to come home and sit and watch television. I don't care what family you were. I guess we were all more family orientated then. I'm talking like a lot of the people that I knew then. I mean, it was, you did your chores and you did things. You went visiting, you did this. You didn't sit and watch television. You didn't drive up and down Main Street, drag Main. And it certainly didn't hurt us to get involved and do all that.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about the things you did when you were younger, but when you got a little bit older, what were some of the activities that you got to do in like high school age?
I wasn't real active in high school. Went there, did what I had to, but as far as organizations or things on, I really didn't do anything there, you know. At that stage of my life, I was really bashful. I know there are a lot of people who don't believe I was, but I really was at that point. I was just real quiet, you know, and just, so I didn't do anything much.
Okay. When did you start dating?
Well, early 20s. Probably about 18, 19 a little bit, and then about early 20s.
And what was a typical date like?
Probably go dancing in those days. That was the number one thing. We always had dances. Back then we still had barn dances. There was a barn south of town. And they would have, in the summer, they would have Friday night barn dances. And did an awful lot of that.
What kind of music would they play?
Polka waltz. That was basically all the music we had around here then. We had a couple of country bands, and occasionally they'd play too, you know. But that would be about it.
Okay. And when did you meet your wife?
What year was that now? 73, 74? 74.
And how did you meet her?
A cousin of mine had gotten married, and I was an usher, and she was a bridesmaid. And that's how that relationship took off.
And how long were you together before you got married?
About a year and a half, and then we got married. It was a year and a half. We were married in 75.
And can you describe your wedding for us?
Very big. It was in September, on September 6th. Beautiful warm day. Got married at Zion Lutheran, had a reception there, and we danced at the Zapp Hall. There were just an awful lot of people there. I remember that. And,
Go ahead.
we also had a polka waltz band play for that, so that was the trend with a lot of, we pretty much was the music everybody grew up with here.
Right. Did you go on a honeymoon?
About a week later, because she had a job interview the Tuesday after our wedding, and so we couldn't leave until then, until after that. We'd gone down to the Black Hills.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share about dating or getting married?
No, because her folks live here, but she had moved down to Bismarck, and remember she came home one particular weekend, and it was in the winter. Terrible snowstorm, was snowed in at the farm, couldn't go anywhere for 3-4 days. And why did I bother to come over? No one could get anywhere. That was horrible, but yeah, no. Oh, one thing I do remember when I unveiled her at the actual ceremony, and I had these goofy wingtip shoes on, and I got caught in the carpeting in front of the altar and almost fell. People thought I was passing out, and I wasn't. It was just that my shoe got caught. But we made it. 33 years later, we're still here.
All right. What was it like growing up on the plains?
It was quiet. You could see wildlife. Back then, wildlife was in town because we weren't as large as we are now. You could see the wide open area. One thing that I still miss to this day that we can't do, but everyone did it in the fall of the year, they clean out their gardens and form a big pile and light a match and let it burn. And I miss that aroma, still to this day. It was a easier, quieter way of, or what do you call lifestyle, than what we have now.
Right. What did you find beautiful about the plains?
Beautiful? Seeing the wide open country, the green. When it was snowing, you could view the beauty of the white all over. It was just a beautiful place to live, You didn't have to go too far. You get out to the rural area. There was a farm. You could be with the cattle. You could whatever. Didn't have to drive miles and miles of city. You had it all here.
Right. Was there anything you found bleak or oppressive about growing up on the plains?
Bleak would probably be not having a lot of the services that you would have elsewhere, that you had, that we still experience to this day, even though we're larger. There's just a lot of things that aren't offered to you here.
Okay. Can you tell us what a typical winter was like when you were growing up?
Very cold. Lots of snow. When I was growing up, there was such thing as a car heater or a spark plug heater. So if your vehicle didn't start, you walked. It was just, that's when I was growing up. And winters have certainly mellowed from then. But yeah, it was just, it seemed like we had a longer winter, much longer. spring, when we started getting the spring thaws, the city didn't have the snow removal equipment. It was treacherous driving through the ice, the slush, you're pretty much prisoners in your home for a while.
Right. What was a typical spring like?
When it finally did arrive, it would generally be a quick warm. You know, it would just be really nice. And then, of course, everybody got preparing for the annual garden planting and looking forward to a warm season. Although we had no air conditioning and a lot of people in, so summers were quite miserable.
What else do you remember about summers?
Oh, as the song "Lazy, Hazy, Crazy Days of Summer" goes, that's kind of what it was. You know, I mean, unless you were on a farm, but in town it was pretty much very laid back. If it was warm, you sat in the shade. Sundays here, nothing was open. Not even a service station, not a restaurant. Everything was closed. So you had just a real laid back. And yeah, I mean, there were things. We had our local carnival that we'd have every summer here and that, but it was, that's about it.
Can you describe the carnival?
They were generally small ones, you know, I mean, but it was enough to get the people, again, to get the farming area to come into town, and they'd have a few rides, a few games, and it was a place for everybody to get together to visit and chat with friends and neighbors, and for the young kids to ride. We used to have rodeos too, and that was the 4th of July was our rodeo day. It was called the Cowboys Reunion Rodeo, and we'd get a lot of people coming to town for that rodeo. I remember going to those. I enjoyed those.
Can you tell us about those?
Oh, they would have lots of. They didn't have a lot of riders, you know, then. But I remember who was the. Oh, there was a country star that was here. I don't remember his name. Smiley Burnett, I think, or something. Then that's some way back. But he was here one year. That drew a lot of people there, and it was just it was just really fun watching. There was always a big parade too before the rodeo started. You know, all the cowboys, and there'd be floats and things, and that was just nice.
Right. Is there anything else you want to share with us about summers when you were growing up?
Boy, not that I can think of right now.
Okay. Then can you tell us what fall was like?
Fall, dreaded it. School. It was. That was the time to clean everything up and get ready for winter. It was. School started. You dreaded that for a few days until you got back in the grind. But as a youngster, you look forward to Halloween because you got to go around and get all your goodies, you know, and that. And back in then, when we were smaller, you could start from one end of the town and do the whole thing in one night, you know.
All right. Is there anything else you remember about fall?
No, that.
Okay. Which was your favorite season?
Summer. And it still is. I love summer.
Any particular reason?
I like warm weather. Although, you know, I'm not a cold weather person.
All right. Can you tell me a little bit about the health care that was available to you when you were growing up?
We had a general practitioner that was here. an old German doctor. Well, we had two, one in Hayes and one in Beulah, but Dr. Ewert was in town here, and Dr. Vinci in Hayes, and we really had good physicians. I mean, here, there. And of course, the hospital's always been in Hazen. Not always. Beulah had one for a while, but I don't remember it, okay? That's before I was born. And then Hazen got the hospital, but we had really good care.
How often did you see a doctor when you were growing up?
Not, not a whole lot. You know, I mean, we would get there. Colds were always home treated, you know. My mom would get these mustard plasters, you know, that she'd mix and put on your chest, and there was a German deal, and this is like medical, but in German it was called Brauche. I don't know what it's in English, okay? But my grandmother could do this, and there were other ladies, but there were just, if you had a certain issue with something that was wrong with you, and it's almost like a witchcraft, but it's not, because like I had a sty in my eye. I'm gonna use that as an example. Going to the doctor, they didn't know what was wrong. My grandma, but if you had to follow their rules and their guidelines, and you had to do this, and it was all, she would say words in German, and she would, you know, and always finish it with, by making the sign of the cross. In 2 days, I lost the sty in my eye. You know, she helped a lot of people like that. And the most unusual thing about that is she learned it from her father, and she could only pass it on to one of her sons, and it had to go generation to generation, but none of the boys wanted to learn how to do that. So that's done. But she helped and cured a lot of people. I remember she had a big string that she had tied, and you had to step through the string 3 times, you know, while she was saying certain words. And when she died, we found some of her different sayings that she had written up. And a lot of it had Bible verses to it too, you know, and that. But she had this born talent to do that.
Do you remember any other of her cures, or?
Oh, she could do that just about any. I don't remember anymore what some of the others were. I went there for several times. I had a rash on my body that she got rid of too. You know, but she always started out, "You have to believe in me. If you don't, this won't work." And those who didn't believe it, you know, which was very few. But yeah.
Right.
I just don't even know how to spell the word Brauche, but that's the German word Brauche. You know, and if you may have heard that word from others you've interviewed, I don't know, but that's like from my grandparents, you know, that's where it stopped doing this.
Okay. Did you ever visit a dentist when you were growing up?
Not younger. Once I got high school level, I did. We did have a dentist in town, you know, but that was never stress dental.
How often were you supposed to brush your teeth?
You know, we never brushed it until I started going to a dentist. Dental was something you just didn't do. And medical only if absolutely necessary.
How about an optometrist?
If it was really, really bad, yeah, I'm talking my family now, you know. I mean, I was like junior high, and I really needed glasses, and then finally they agreed I could be tested. But see, they didn't have any medical insurance, and there wasn't any money, and so you just did without a lot of things.
All right. Is there anything else you remember about healthcare when you were growing up?
Other than that, no.
Okay. What was your most stressful childhood experience?
Most stressful. Probably, I used to be quite heavy, obese, was the razzing, the teasing about my obesity, because I was very obese as a child. Until I got a little bit smart and started laughing with them, and they stopped. That would, I'd say, be my stressful. That and seeing families that, friends of mine that did have things, that you didn't have.
All right. What was your happiest childhood experience?
Trying to figure out what. There were lots, but being in good health, being able to play with friends. There were just so many, I mean, that it just to actually summarize it, would be to and to have a family. Some of those things you don't realize until you get older, that was important,
All right. What was the most adventurous thing you did as a child?
Most adventurous. Yeah. I don't really know on that one. Wasn't real adventurous. We really didn't much. Oh, I don't remember this, but our one neighbor there, they had a little girl. She was in her swimming pool and she fell face down in the water. And they told me, I don't remember because I wasn't that old, but I went there and I pulled her out of the water.
Was she all right?
Oh yeah, yeah. She just went out. I saw it happen, and I went there, and I still don't remember. In fact, I talked to her mother not too long ago, and she, don't you remember the day you pulled Peg yet? No, I don't. I was younger then, but I suppose that would be adventurous.
Right.
But that probably be about it.
Okay.
I didn't lead a real active life. And now I'm too old to do it.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about your childhood?
Oh, just one thing. You talk about activities and things like that, things that we did, Then there wasn't much a social activity. So if there was a wedding, that was the highlight. Everybody went to the wedding, and that, not everybody, but you looked forward to doing that. That was a form of getting out and doing something.
Can you describe a typical wedding?
Typical wedding was, depending what faith you were in, but I'll talk Lutheran, was always, it could be any day of the week. It didn't have to be just a Friday or Saturdays. There were weddings that was just chose a date. It could have been Wednesday, Thursday, but it was always at the church, and then you had your reception at the hall wherever you had your dance at, and it was generally like a late afternoon, early evening wedding, and you had your evening meal. The bride and groom always opened their gifts, and then the dance started. And what I remember about these dances is, if the dance started at 9 o'clock, you may get home at 4 or 5 in the morning. They just went. There was no stopping, on those. They had all the free keg beer and whiskey that you wanted, and for those that were, that wanted it, that was there, and they'd stop at midnight and have a midnight lunch. I guess the one thing I really remember that doesn't happen anymore, at midnight, the bride and groom were seated on chairs in the middle of the hall, and everybody stood around them, and they sang a song, and it's "How Nice is Youth," Wie schön ist die Jugend. And at the one verse is when the maid of honor took the veil off of the bride, and in that verse it was, "You've left your youthhood and you're now an adult." And when that song was over, there were usually 4 or 5 guys to each chair. They took the bride and groom and threw them in the air, and they put them down, and then then the dancing started again. And that's a custom that no longer happens. That happened at everybody's wedding.
Right.
So, and that was neat, you know. When we got married, they wanted to do it for us. And my one friend says, I can hardly wait. You better hang on, you're going to fly. And I said, we're not doing it. So, but yeah, that's something you don't see then. But that was that was the time to socialize. Got to visit with everybody.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell us about your childhood?
No, I think that might be it.
All right. You mentioned that after graduation from high school, you got a job in town for a while.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you work before you went on to college?
I just worked the summer, and then I went to BSc for 1 year, and I made the big mistake of coming home and taking, after 1 year of college, working for a year to earn more money so I could go to school. And I made the big mistake of doing that because when you start making money, I started working for our local bank, and I just never went back.
Did your family encourage you to go to college?
No.
Were they opposed to it?
They couldn't afford it. They felt bad, you know. But yeah, it was like, no. So, and I did. So I started working there, and I guess it probably didn't hurt me because back then you could get a job anywhere with experience. Not anymore.
Right. How long did you work at the bank?
6.5 years. And then I started working for Basin Electric Power Cooperative for 24.5. And I accepted early retirement. And that's where I'm at today. Still working part-time.
Can you tell us what that year was like when you were at college?
Coming from a smaller community and the type of family life or comradeship you had with everybody, it was scary moving to Bismarck. For me, you know, I mean, it was like a big change, you know, and it was definitely. It wasn't like moving to a large college. It was kind of like going to a bigger high school, going to BSc. What's BSc now? You know, so it was kind of different at first, but I liked it. It's just that I should never have thought could work a year. It never happens. I never encourage. If I hear anybody now say, "I got to take a year off," don't ever do that. You'll never go back.
What classes did you take?
Business type classes. I took some of these. Well, I took some business and mainly these generals, you know. But I should have kept on going. But oh well. It's one of those what ifs.
Where did you live while you were there?
I had an apartment on Thayer Avenue down there. Just a small little one-room jobber that this guy had. It was just like a couple of blocks from the shopping area, and if I needed something, and it was fine, you know. Just that I should have continued on my course.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about when you were going to college?
No, that.
All right. Why do you think it's important to tell your life story?
Why do I think it's important? It's as important for me to tell my life story as I feel it's important to dig into genealogy, record what there is. You know, what I've done here is, and I've done this a long time ago, I wrote up and I recapped our whole wedding events, you know, whatever happened on the day of, and blah, blah, blah. We know, but someday your children will want to know that. And that's why it's important to do that. And I really wish this could have been done. And like about 20 years ago, when I'm a member of the local Germans from Russia here, and we had so many of these old timers that came from Russia. If this could have all been documented, all that history that's 6 feet under the ground, you know. And so whether it's me who's 60 or Albert who's 98 or whatever, um, just do it. As much as I feel it's important to go and find out your ancestors, I am in the process of digging back to some of my great-great-great-grandparents. I'm working with a guy in Germany now that I think we're from the same family, and so I think it's important. But I need more winter so I can continue on with it. But this is okay to do this.
All right. Are there any other thoughts or observations you'd like to share with us?
No, I think it's getting fried.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us.
You're welcome.